Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I have a little different perspective here because I'm coming in here as a crime laboratory director. Troy said the whole business here is more money, more money, more money, and that's my job. I have to find the money to do so that you can do your job. And that's my whole goal in life, is to kind of finish off my career and say, we did it. We kept everything alive and running. To take the concept or the way the presentation was supposed to go was talk about things like the evolution of trace evidence. And in that area, what I'm looking at primarily as a laboratory director is what's my funding source and what are my staff. Look at the impact on case management and prioritization in the laboratory and resource allocation. And then finally, just touch a little bit on courtroom proceedings and kind of close this with, I hope, an idea that we have. It's not new and novel, but it's something that we were talking about and developed over the years. Now, we were the recipients of a very fortunate set of circumstances in California. In 2000, then Governor Gray Davis put out what he called the Local Forensic Laboratory Improvement Program. He put $25 million into a kitty to be distributed to the 17 local laboratories. And unfortunately, our colleagues in the State Department of Justice were not eligible for the funding. What it said is that the grant award could go from $250,000 up to $3 million. Not being a kind of a hog at the money, I went for $2.91 million. And it was one of those things that oftentimes, when you get in there and you sit down and you write these grants and you go through all of this process, one of the things that you kind of sit there and joke about is the fact, my God, if they give us this money, what in the hell are we going to do with it? Well, guess what? They gave us the money. $2.9 million rolled into my laboratory, and then we had to really do something with it. So that was a very fortunate set of circumstances for us. The other place we look for money is the County General Fund. Right now in my laboratory, to operate on an annual basis, we have about pretty close now to about a $9 million budget for the entire laboratory operation. Out of that $9 million, we put in kind of like the basketball slush fund kind of thing. We put in $250,000 every year as a baseline budget for equipment replacement, renewal, new ideas, and all those types of things. Very, very fortunate that we've been able to maintain that. Before, we had a gentleman over here ask a question or talk about the thing about instrument maintenance. My budget includes, out of that, the total sum, my budget includes about now somewhere close to around $350,000, give and take some change, in instrument maintenance contracts. Agilent is just absolutely ecstatic every time we write a grant here. So there's the things that we look for. Those are the things that I have to look for as a laboratory manager to move this thing along. The other thing is federal grants, and although we all know that federal grants don't necessarily give us equipment and things, they give us tools to do other little neat things in the laboratory. And in our case, we developed some NIJ research grants that allowed us to kind of bring researchers in to the area of trace analysis and kind of focus on some ideas that we are doing there. Let me go and talk just briefly again about the purpose of LFLIP. It was designed to improve local crime laboratory services. It focused on three things: remodeling, renovation, new construction of laboratories, and equipment purchases. Now, out of the $2.9 million that we put into the system, we actually took about $1 million of that and put in a remodeling program for our laboratory. Our laboratory is new. We did have about 5,000 square feet of space that was unassigned, just open, vacant space. And so we used some of our LFLIP money to remodel that area and put in some specialty laboratories and kind of redesign the area. Equipment purchases, we are allowed to really go in there, think big, think outside the box, say what could we do to make this thing work. And so we were very fortunate. This is the equipment that we were able to purchase off of the LFLIP, a second SEM system, UV Vis microspectrophotometer, FT Raman spectrometer, liquid or LCM SMS, and then also the laser ablation ICP-MS. Those are the instruments that we brought in here. There's some interesting things that happened. Remember, out of the $2.9 million, about $1 million of that was set aside for the renovation of the laboratory. By the time we got through with the renovation project in the laboratory, the actual cost of that was $2.5 million. They kept coming to me and saying, we need more money, and I said, I don't have more money, you're going to have to find it, and the county actually came forward and threw in the extra $1.5 million to finish off the project. But what was interesting, as we went in and brought these instruments in, we found that there were things that we hadn't really thought through, and in particular the ICP-MS in the laboratory, to put that together, to put it in place, some of the things and some of the tools and laboratory designs that we had to do. That, of course, jacked up the price, getting it almost way out of bounds. But the rest of it is, the rest of the money then was allocated towards equipment purchases and worked very well for us. Now, what we already have existing in the trace evidence laboratory is the GRIM-3, another SEM, FTR microspectrophotometer, ion chromatograph, automated pyrolysis, GCMS, and all of the microscopes that you could possibly ask for and imagine in your best dreams. Now, you have to understand that as a laboratory director, like I kept saying, is I have to find the money, and that's my job. But who works for me is also may be a clue of why we're doing what we're doing. Faye Springer. I'm very fortunate to have Faye with me. I always know when Faye wants something because she comes into my office, her glasses are down and she's looking over the top at me, because I know that at that point in time she's going to ask me for something new and different and novel. And so then I run out and try and figure out how to get that for her so we keep her happy and keep her working in there. The staffing. The trace evidence section, we have Faye Springer over on this side. On that side of the room, we have Chip Pollock, who is also one of our trace examiners. Trevor Wilson is back home telling all the police officers that Faye will be back next week to do the cases. And then when I said we had the senior student interns primarily focused on research and coming into the laboratory, we've been very fortunate. We have had a very close working relationship with the University of California, Davis Forensic Science Program, Master's Forensic Science Program. And from there, we've been able to draw into our laboratory some really exceptional new scientists coming in with a focus on trace, primarily because Faye is there, but with a focus on trace evidence, and giving them some projects. Now, we had 2 NIJ research grants. One was Abigail Dodds. She did ICP-MS on glass. The second individual was Sarah Wiltshire, who did the LCMS-MS on a fiber grant, and we're just finishing that one up. Third person that we have is actually going to make a presentation, I think tomorrow, on glass, Karen Harrington. She's also doing ICP-MS on glass. She unfortunately couldn't write enough grants to get her some money, so she was doing this just as a student intern. We've also had interns come in and work on some things and some ideas on, I think there was a toothpaste and gunshot residue and some of these other things that came in. So we have a real nice, rich source of new people coming in that are kind of letting us do our job, but at the same time giving us the ability to do some research and look at some new things or different things in the area of trace evidence. Now, what is the impact on case management? Well, we got these 2 scenarios that we had at the beginning here, and I want to kind of real quickly go through, at least from my perspective, what we do. The scenario was female victim, ligature strangulation, partially clothed, possible sexual assault. And we want to look at prioritization and resource allocation. In the sense of prioritization, if in fact our laboratory is called out as for the crime scene, that becomes our priority case. And we don't go out on all the crime scenes. Obviously in Sacramento County, we have thousands of crimes going on. We're in the midst of a gang-related shooting kinds of things now, so we have a lot of drive-bys and all this type of things going on. We don't go out to all of these call-outs. On the average, we get somewhere now about 20, 25 call-out crime scenes, major crimes a year, where we'll go out and assist the lead investigating agency on there. So if it becomes, in this case, a prioritization and we're asked to respond to there, we're going to go out there. Now, the other thing that happens in our system is that if the person goes out to the scene, Faye Springer or Chip goes out as the lead criminalist on the case, then they're also responsible for overseeing the management of that evidence when it comes in the laboratory. Where's it going to go? Who's going to get it? If there's gunshot or firearms involved in that, they're coordinating all of that with our other technical units in the laboratory to make sure that that case kind of flows through the system and keeps on moving. Now, if, on the other hand, we don't respond to the crime scene, the local agency does the crime scene, then that evidence comes into the laboratory as what we would classify as an investigative level case. And there we have to look at the priorities or assign some priorities if it's coming in from the investigating agency. And usually the way our priorities work is we look at if in fact it's a perceived public threat, something like a serial crime. That takes obviously some precedence for us, and we're going to have some emphasis on how we're going to move that case or put a priority on it. Death of a police officer, public official. We have two cases right now that in Sacramento County. One was a sheriff's deputy who was found on a rural country road, shot. That case was back, I think, in October of last year, and we're still getting evidence coming in the door on that particular case. And then just recently, here, as soon as I think about 2 weeks ago, we had a California highway patrolman laying down a road grid, and he was hit by a speeding escaped convict or whatever the heck he was, and anyway, he gets the officer was killed. So we were also called in on that, even though that particular case occurred outside of Sacramento County's jurisdiction. We were called by the district attorney, asked to participate, help in that particular case, and then also called by the CHP to do some of the work on the hit vehicle. Also, child deaths become some level of priority, and then the needs of the investigation. Do we have to take that case forward? Does somebody have to go out and get a search warrant? So there it is. And then the last one is the political, media, and public pressure issues. Because if it's political, and being in Sacramento, which is the capital of California, obviously politics plays a very large role in what goes on there. And certainly the district attorney is a very political person. We work for the district attorney. We're kind of an unusual agency. We don't work for the police agency. We work for the district attorney. There's positive and negative in working for the district attorney. They understand forensic science, the district attorney. They've got their training through all of the CSI programs, so they understand forensic science. And they're very willing to come and tell us how to do our job or suggest to us what they saw last night on the last CSI. So we're doing that. Media, public pressure, we know all that happens. Resource allocations, crime scene response, we know we have to have that person out, or the staff out. 2 criminalists go out to the scene, time, equipment, all these other kinds of things that are involved there. Management response, not my management response, but my boss above me management response, a deputy district attorney, a chief deputy district attorney. Does the laboratory invest the time, resources, in an examination of evidence that police or prosecution may not use? And they're always asking that question for me. We also get into arguments. She tells me I'm not a lawyer. I tell her she's not a forensic scientist, and we kind of agree someplace in the middle on that thing. Resource allocations in the laboratory. You know what you're supposed to do there. You're all trace evidence experts. I can't even presume to tell you what you're going to do out there when you're faced with this kind of stuff. Impact on the case management from the carjacking robbery scenario. One of the things that we have there is in terms of prioritization, actually it's unlikely that the laboratory is even going to be called out on something like that. The other agencies are going to take care of those kinds of things. They're going to do the collection of evidence. They're going to do all the things that they're supposed to do. And actually the case will probably come in and submit it to us as an investigative level case. But when it does get that label and the scenario behind it, quite frankly, it's probably going to get a low priority in the laboratory. Somebody else or some other issue is going to arise that'll probably take care of the case, and it may never actually become a real working case for us in the laboratory. Same response for management. Do you have to do it, and why do you have to do it? If we're never going to use it, or are we going to use it? And then laboratory response, as has been said previously, we know we need to make that association, and that's where my staff steps in and does the work. Court proceedings, the court actually, what does the court see is what each side present at trial. That's what the court is going to look at. They're not going to make so much a decision of, gee, why didn't you do this? But the criminalist's role in those court proceedings is kind of twofold, or threefold, I guess. Understand the meaning of physical evidence within the context of the case, and then with that understanding of the physical evidence in the context of the case, understand what the prosecution's theory is on that crime. And not so much are we supporting that, but is the work that we have done going to kind of mesh with what their theory is over here? And if it isn't, we've got to let them know and got to work with them. And then also the criminalist has to anticipate what is the defense theory, because that's always going to be different. Prosecution is this, defense is this, and someplace in the middle the criminalist has to come together and start talking about that. Here's some of the things. Can we find the, and I don't know if this is the right analogy, can we find the forest with all these darn trees in the place here? And we're investing a lot in high-tech tools. But somewhat our scientists now, our young scientists, our new scientists have lost the ability to determine if two items are even similar before we proceed and ask you to do something really exotic with the analysis. They have a difficult time even evaluating to some degree at the simplest, most basic levels. And I think our other panelists have mentioned that as some of the issues that we've lost that thing. Crime labs have de-emphasized training. We have to figure out, I have to figure out how to keep you trained and well-trained throughout your career so that you grow continuously as you go through this. Crime labs have de-emphasized screening. It's also been mentioned. Instead of looking at it and deciding and moving forward with a real simple screening process and even determining if you have to move the case forward, we just simply push it to somebody and get it off our desks or get it off our plates. And then a lack of understanding what the right tools to use, and when you get the results from those tools that you're using, what in the heck do they mean? And so those are some problems I think that we see. Now, one of the things that we tried to address when we wrote our LFLIP grant was to develop a Trace Evidence Resource Center. Not a new and novel approach, nothing unusual about that. We wanted to locate the regional center at our laboratory. We wanted to equip it with state-of-the-art equipment, and we wanted to make sure that we could offer this equipment and the use of the equipment to all the other public forensic laboratories in California. And there were, at that time that this grant was written, there were 30. We looked at why we wanted to develop the center, things like new method development, standardization, validations of technology and equipment. Emphasis on DNA has taken away money and ideas and things away from your area of expertise, so I needed to refocus that by putting together the Resource Center. We also looked at it being a repository for materials, reference materials, and the last one down here was probably the most critical for us because we wrote it that we would have a visiting scientist program. The grant actually provided funds to have staff and experts from other laboratories in California come up to Sacramento. We had funding for each of those people to stay, 2 people from each laboratory to stay for up to a week and work with my staff on the new equipment that we got. And what was happening is that out of all of the 30 laboratories in the state of California, 2 of them showed up. One showed up for a half a day, the other one showed up for a day and then turned around and went back home. Okay? So I couldn't even convince my colleagues that this was something that we needed to do. We kind of skipped that. What we ultimately ended up doing is saying and creating what we call a fee-for-service program. Basically, the agency sends us the evidence, we conduct the analysis, we supply all the data with the interpretation, we incorporate all the results into our laboratory reports, and then our criminalist is called to testify, and then we do a cost recovery from that agency for maintenance, consumables, and staff time. Now, amazingly, it wasn't the laboratory, and it is not the laboratories who are calling us for this service. Most of the calls that we receive under this program are from the attorneys, because their laboratory or the district attorney in Southern California or Los Angeles or Redding or someplace, they can't get their local laboratory to do it, and so they're coming to us and asking for us to do that. And that was kind of our guidelines that we put together. So real quickly, I spoke as fast as I could. My tongue is now tied into a big knot someplace back over here. But hopefully, if you have questions, I'll be able to answer those for you when we have our answering session. Thank you very much.